Of course, all the charts say this hasn't been properly measured, the depths aren't accurate.
I kind of don't want to believe the charts, but we're going to try it and see.
2 meters and the depth alarm is going off. 6 hours ago, we ran aground. This morning, Indioko has run dry. We have 2 water tanks on board and we have a little water pump that drives the water out the tanks into our taps and things. Normally, we use up 1 tank and then the pump starts going a bit kind of crazy, it makes a lot of noise, and we know that that means we need to switch over to the other tank and that we're going to have to fill up. Well, we switched over a couple of weeks ago and of course we completely forgot. So this morning we woke up and the pump's going nuts and we have no water on board. So we're going to have to go fill up, which means heading to the dock, and then we are free again. Another little problem we've had recently is our portside engine is no longer starting from the key, which is super annoying. Thankfully, we have a solution there as well. Bryony has to head down inside the engine bay. We actually have a little button on our starter motor that shorts the motor and starts the engine first time. So the engine is fine, but something is up with the little key that we have to turn up here. So once she's in position, you good? I have to turn the key like this. She then presses the button and the whistle stops. Nothing but the height of technology here on the boat. Hopefully we'll get that fixed sooner rather than later, because I also then can't steer until she's clear of the engine bay or I might cut her in half. So she's out now, which is good. Okay, this is at the bridle, which usually means I have to then hold position for a while and not overtake the anchor chain. Nice one. So now Bri has the fun of setting up all the fenders and all the lines that we need in the time it takes me to just do the important thing. I'm working too, all right? We're just gonna head into the dock now to get some fuel, and it is blowing 32 knots at the moment. I don't know if it's just our bad luck, but we seem to pretty consistently find ourselves at around 30.
3 meters. Thank you, half a meter.
That fender didn't hold out. All right, let's grab the hose and go nuts.
We're hoping that's the last time we need to come and fill up with water for a while. It's always so annoying needing to plan out our route based on where we can find a dock, when we'd much rather just be off exploring more remote places. But this sets us free again for a while, and we can just get the sails up and go and find somewhere to get lost for a little bit.
Filled up with water. We've been trapped down in Marigot for just a bit too long, and so we've decided we're going to peg it north around to a place called Pinel, which is right around the other side of the island. It's a little hidden anchorage that some people like to head off to. What do we currently got speed-wise?
Oh, there it is at 38.
38 knots apparent. That's always going to be fun. Ooh, that's some swell. So yeah, we're 2 reefed on the Genoa, 2 reefs on the main. We should get there in no time. We're flying along. Like lots of boats, we have a traveller which helps us adjust the shape of our main. A lot of the time it just sits in the middle because that's easiest when we're doing tacking and things, but when we're trying to get close to wind like this to get further up, one of the things we've discovered, and I'm sure many people know, I realize how stupid I look right now, we can pull our mainsail around, which kind of moves the centre point of the boat, so the axis of the boat that's attacking the wind, so it gets us a little bit closer to the wind without losing speed. So basically this loop goes up, connects to the bottom of the traveller, across the boat and back again. So we can pull it to starboard or port, depending which one of these we pull on, and we're going to bring it over to our starboard today. So, a couple of wraps. This side's under tension right now, whereas this side's all loose. So I can take the port off, And then I can drag the traveller all the way over. Cool, we'll hold it at that.
So we fitted radar up the mast a couple of weeks ago now, and we can now see weather charts on top of the actual charts, so we can see clouds are coming in or when other boats are nearby. But now we can see the name of the boats and say hi.
Many of you know what AIS is, but basically it's kind of like radar, but only boats,
Yeah,
I guess.
like everybody has their own signal that they ping out if they've turned their AIS on, and then now we have a system that we can read other people's pings. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, this similarly would be, you know, Find My Friend if you have an iPhone, or other phone manufacturers do exist, where you have like a map and you can see pins where everyone is. Well, kind of like that. So we can see boats that we know and boats that we don't. And then randomly on our chart, on occasion, we'll have this big scary red arrow start pointing at us.
Yeah, it's like, you're going to crash! And it looks really dramatic, and then you look around for the boat and you're like, oh, it's miles away, and they're clearly going to turn before they get you.
And that's it. So we can see for, I don't even know, it's maybe 12 miles, I think. Basically, we can see to the horizon because it works using similar antennas to our radio, which also lets us talk to boats on the horizon. So it's really nice in terms of a bit of relaxation because we can now see things that maybe the weather stops us seeing. However, not all boats have AIS. So
yeah, you do still have to keep an eye out, but it's this kind of extra level of safety and security of feeling we're just that little bit less alone out here.
Yeah, and that's where radar comes in. If they don't have AIS, they show up on the radar, and then our little radar screen shows up these little circles saying, hey, heads up, this thing's moving. And we can then take a look and try and work out if it's a boat or a weather system or a buoy or a fisherman or whatever.
Yeah, so it's really cool to see it all overlaid on top of each other on the one chart plotter, because then you don't have to keep like switching between screens or have different apps open or whatever.
Although I do quite like the whole 1980s thing, which we can also bring up just to feel cool. Then I need it to project onto my face while we're talking.
Yeah, like a head-up display and the sunglasses.
Yeah, like it's closing in. That kind of, like, oh, Hunt for the Red October, basically. That's what I want in my life. But we're almost there, I guess, to the whole overlaying a radar on a chart plot. We're able to see boats all over the world. I mean, really, seriously. What year is it we live in?
What more could you want? Tomorrow now, so I think we're going to sail over and see what the conditions are like. Sometimes it can get a bit rolly there, and then we'll sail down to Penel behind us, and hopefully it's kind of protected enough in there. And then if it's not, then we'll just motor back over to Tintamar. See how close we can get under sail without hitting anybody, and see what it's like. Okay, what's the verdict?
So I think what we'll do is we'll swing and do a downwind sail over to Penel. We have to watch out for the reef, and then we'll go around the back of Penel, see what it's like, and if it's the same or worse, or if it's the same or better, we'll stay, and if it's worse, we'll come back.
Sounds good.
All right.
So we've come over to Penel, and it looks really shallow and lots of reefs and stuff around. So we're going to turn around, drop the sails, and then motor in and hopefully not ground ourselves on the way in. I just came to pick up the camera and almost fell over because these waves coming behind us are just really random, and you get one massive one that tips the whole boat up onto its side. So we're a little bit unsure of our footing. So what's the plan?
So as we approached Penel, we suddenly discovered that it gets really shallow really fast. And now we're going to try and get in through the narrowest of passages and hopefully not ground on our way in to Penel. I can see a few more masts now, so it's obviously quite sheltered because a few people have chosen to hide here. I'm just a bit nervous because there's a really nice big opening that looks like the way to go, but on the charts it says it's like 0 meters deep. Anyway, but there's a deeper channel, but it's an awful lot narrower. So once we get past the reef that's on the outside of Penel, then we have to kind of hang a right, and hopefully we get the right line on the way in. Of course, all the charts say this hasn't been properly measured, the depths aren't accurate, there's navigational markers on the charts that don't exist. So we're kind of guessing, but that's okay.
We have breakers this side, breakers that side, and a tiny gap that looks like it just leads to a beach. So I kind of don't want to believe the charts, but we're going to try it and see.
I mean, it's picture perfect Caribbean sandy beach, palm tree huts, of course. But everything on our chart says like, no, rocky, 2.5 meters under the boat. I need to find a spot to anchor, I think. 2 meters and the depth alarm is going off. Oh, that's us hitting the bottom. That's us on the ground. 6 hours ago, we ran aground. For the first time in this boat, Indy hit the sand. Thankfully it was sand and seagrass, but we were very aground. We were cruising into Pinel, everything was looking pretty good. It was getting shallow, and I was even joking about that because we've done a few shallow sails in the past. If you've ever watched Patreon stuff, we did a little season in Croatia a while back where we went up a very narrow, very shallow passage, and we managed to do it successfully. So I was trying to be all brave and say it's fine, we'll be okay, and then there was a little shudder. And I thought, oh, it's probably just some seagrass, a little lump of sand I didn't see coming. Oh no, there's some more. Oh, and we've stopped. It's our depth gauge is off. The question is, do we forward or back? Nope, that's digging in. We might need to go snorkeling, I think. Yeah. Do you want to jump in? Yeah. What I'd like to find out is the bottom made of coral or is it made of seaweed? Yeah. And are both keels wedged in? If one keel is the problem, because our problem right now is our keels are air conditioned. So if one keel is the problem, I need to know if I go forward, can I plough us out the problem? Or am I making it worse? Yeah. I just don't want our keels snapping off and there's a chance. Hang on, I've got more movement on the floor. Which might be bad news. I need to know if it's going to get shallower and shallower. Yeah. Or if I can push through to this one here, I think.
Looks like seagrass.
Good. How deep are we in the water? Like, how dug in? Okay, just tell me if it gets deep over there.
We weren't completely stuck, but we definitely couldn't go anywhere.
Yeah, so what basically ended up happening was we ended up deep enough that when a wave came, the boat lifted slightly, and then it would hammer back down on the sand really heavy. The whole weight of the boat would bang back down on the keels. And the keels on this boat are sacrificial. They're made to snap off if you hit a reef, which we really don't need right now. So thankfully the weight kept landing vertically on the keels rather than sideways as if we were hitting a reef. We were on the sand, so they just kept slamming into sand, and they eventually dug themselves some trenches.
We're going to try and ditch all of the water we have on board to loosen weight. So I'm just going to open up all the taps and see if the boat gets lighter so we can get off this reef. I do not like the movement we've got. It's so unnatural. Okay, taps are running, but that is not going fast enough. The water pump can't keep up. So I'm going to try and find like a bucket and just empty the water tanks. Okay, we have tried, I don't know how many things. We tried spinning on the spot, we tried snorkeling to find a route out. So now we've kind of given up. Somebody came to help us with the dinghy. We had 2 dinghies trying to pull the bow round, then checked again with a snorkel, looked like it was getting shallower. So we tried 2 dinghies on the stern, trying to reverse us out, and we did not shift at all. But that guy told us that it's currently absolute low tide. So we've checked that and got 2 different reports. We're hoping that it's true. So we've just thrown the anchor out and Ian walked it out across the sand. It's only like waist height. We're now throwing out a stern anchor, and hopefully that'll just hold us in place side on to this really strong current that we have coming in from the channel. And we need to wait probably about 2 hours, and then hopefully we will float enough that we can just turn, and then we need to decide whether to go out the slightly deeper but narrow channel or go out the way we came, which should work, but obviously it didn't get in. So there's still decisions to be made, and we're very hopeful that works, because by waiting it's going to be getting dark, and that was my biggest worry, that we're then having to deal with us on the dark. Clearly our depth gauge isn't working, so while we wait for the tide to rise again, we figured we would put this PVC pipe, tied it loosely onto the boat, and then we've just marked where we want the water to be, where we think we need it to be, to give us enough depth that we can actually sail off. So we've got these black lines on and we're just keeping an eye on things. It does seem to be coming up, which is giving us hope. We just have to be patient and wait until we are not bouncing and thudding into the ground again, and hopefully not wrecking our keels. Oh, the joys!
We ended up with these trenches, which as thankfully the tide, which changes about 20 centimeters a day or something stupid. As that tide came in, we did basically float in our little trenches that we'd made.
Yeah, the shuddering lessened.
It lessened, but it then made the risk that if we're in a trench, if we moved either way, then that whole snapping keel thing I was talking about would be really bad. So here's the nature of our problem. Right now, I'm basically standing up. I shouldn't be this close to the boat and be able to stand up. If I step with one foot this way, it's pretty deep. And yet, if I walk towards the bow of the boat, I'm pretty sure I shouldn't be able to see my waistline. So, it's ideal if you're wanting to clean the bottom of the boat, but this is very shallow. What's happened is our keels have kind of burrowed their way into a trench, so the boat's kind of floating, but it's inside a pit in the sand. So we need to wait for the water level to rise enough that the keels come out of that pit, and then we can sail forwards, backwards, and as you've seen, it's deep pretty much anywhere we go, except where we are. So, slight problem there, but at least we're not hearing the big loud bangs that we were hearing earlier as the boat was bouncing on the bottom. It's doing it every so often, but not nearly as much. So hopefully, an hour or so, we might be floating again properly and be able to exit. Basically, we end up sitting for, I think, 4 hours waiting for the tide to rise. Many a bad word was uttered, many a bad thought.
So it feels really weird because our current plan is just to wait for high tide, which means there's pretty much nothing we can do. So we're just waiting for hours for the sea to come and rescue us. So we realize it's like 5:30 in the afternoon and we haven't eaten lunch yet. So we've just like had a picnic in this beautiful bay. It looks really tranquil and really lovely, but we can't really enjoy it for all of that, obviously. So yeah, it's just really odd kind of sitting around. We started thinking about how we're actually going to leave when we start floating, because we currently have our rocknet anchor on the bridle at the front, and then we've thrown out a secondary anchor on a line at the stern because the current is really strong. It was just blowing us more and more shallow. So we didn't want to start dragging into even shallower waters as the tide came up. So then we realized that if we released one of the anchors, we can't actually pull forward to lift the anchor at the front because it's too shallow where the anchor is. Ian had to walk out and manually plop it on the ground. So I think what we're going to do is, luckily this boat came with 2 anchors and then we bought another one. So we haven't actually got rid of any of the anchors yet. So we have 3 on board. So I think what we're going to do is throw a 3rd anchor off the front and just tie it off to a cleat. That means that we can manually carry the rockner back in that's currently on our bridle, lift that with the windlass, and then we'll still be held off the bow and off the stern from our 2 secondary anchors. Hopefully at that point, when we actually start floating, we can just go 1, 2, 3 and drop the lines, leave the anchors where they are, and we'll float off. We'll go and anchor somewhere where it's a little bit deeper, and then we'll come back in the dinghy as long as we tie fenders on or something so that we float and we can guess where they are. Then we'll try and haul them up somehow into the dinghy. We'll deal with that problem when it comes. It will be dark by that point, so I'm sure it will not go smoothly, but that's the plan. So I went to the forward locker to get the 3rd anchor out, but it was so old and so rusted onto the shackle, onto the chain, that I couldn't undo the shackle at all. So Ian has gone to get an angle grinder and we'll see if that's successful. I think we're just creating things for now to like help us pass the time. We don't really need to be doing any of this. We just can't be doing nothing. The light is fading, so we're just going to try and see if we've got enough water below us to float. It does definitely feel like we're floating now. Ian has jumped in and looked under the keels and thinks we have enough depth beneath us that we won't get caught on the mounds. But our depth stick that we chucked over the back seems to show that nothing has changed. So yeah, we figured before it gets completely dark, we'll just give it a try. Then we'll need to anchor here in the bay, which we do not want to do, but that will allow us to retrieve the secondary anchors we're going to let loose just now, and then we may as well just stay here the night if all of that goes to plan. Otherwise we'll be waiting another couple of hours and then trying again, I guess. So yeah, let's really hope this works.
So we then tried to power the boat forward, turned it 90 degrees, then the thudding turns into creaking.
Really scary creaking.
Eventually, after full power on a dinghy that nearly sank, after full power on both the engines which you were helming, pushing us out, the boat did float again.
Okay, we are free. Oh my goodness, that was so difficult. We dropped the anchor lines and we spun, but the stern line we weren't moving away from it, so I had to hold the fender for a while because we didn't want to get our props caught, and then we figured that actually we were kind of still stuck. So Ian jumped in the dinghy, went and retrieved that first anchor, and then we figured actually while he was in the dinghy he may as well pull the bow. So again, it kind of took maybe like 5-10 minutes. There were lots of very horrible noises, a lot of creaking coming from that starboard keel, so I have no idea the condition that is in, but we managed to spin, and then we managed to just somehow kind of eventually glide off the little pinnacle of sand that we'd been stuck on. So we've just motored like 50 meters this way and anchored for now. We've got one anchor. This was the stern anchor, so Ian got that in the dinghy before we got free, and he's just gone to get the other dinghy, the other anchor. And now we have to decide whether to stay here for the night or to leave while it's high tide. It's a super narrow channel and we can't really see much anymore, but we don't really want to be here anymore. So yeah, decisions still to be made, but at least we are floating. We're doing what a boat is supposed to do. That was terrifying. I really thought we might be stuck there forever and just have to live at Pinel.
Because we didn't like the fact that we'd been trapped in Pinel and grounded, we decided that at 9 o'clock at night it was a good idea to lift the anchor, sail out of a passage that's quite narrow and very shallow, and apparently has torpedo fish that attack the boat, as according to Bryony, who was on the lookout. And then we got into the open water, fought the swell, and came to Tintamar, which is a much nicer place to be.
So yeah, we're staying the night in Tintamar, and then tomorrow we'll have to dive on the keels and see what condition they're in when it's light and we can see stuff.
That's it. So until then, we're going to watch black sails and eat dinner.
Yes.
And lots of junk food.
So much junk food.
Yeah, we stocked up. I have chocolate, I have Doritos, I think, and I have more chocolate. They're all mine tonight.
Not even complaining. Morning is here. We're going to jump in and see what this keel looks like. Okay, so not too bad.
Yeah, I was kind of worried there'd be like a chunk missing.
Well, yeah, well, I wasn't going to be too surprised if we got down there and there was only one keel.